Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being here today. In the last week, there's been a lot of heartache, both here at home and across the globe, from the tragic deaths of Rob Reiner and his wife, to the senseless shooting of students at Brown University, and the mass murder of 15 Jews at Bondi Beach in Australia. These situations are an unfortunate reminder that hate still exists, and that we need to work harder to treat one another with respect and civility for the sake of humanity. When we look at what happened in Australia, Jews were gunned down because they were celebrating their faith, and indiscriminate killing simply because of conflicting beliefs. Unfortunately, we're seeing a rise in anti-Semitism, and we all have an obligation to call it out when we see it, regardless of our religious beliefs. I think of the heroic actions of an individual in Australia as an example of this, because he was a Muslim, but he stepped up and disarmed one of the shooters, saving countless Jewish lives. From the footage I saw, it didn't appear that he thought twice before acting. And I'm sure he knew it was going to be dangerous, but he also knew it was the right thing to do, regardless of religion. There's a powerful poem I heard a few years ago at the Holocaust Museum, and it's stuck with me ever since. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. The poem was written in 1946 after World War II. It's a powerful message that's just as true today as it was in 1946. It's a reminder of the obligation we have as human beings to step up and speak out for others in order to maintain a civil society. And it's not as though that's not happening today. There's still a lot of good happening. Random acts of kindness and goodwill that remind us of what's possible when we put aside our differences and treat one another with respect and civility. Because those small acts of kindness and decency all add up and will turn the tide so that the good outweighs the bad. So with that, I'm just going to open it up to questions.
Governor, I think last session, in recent sessions, there's been a bill introduced to mandate that the state teach about the Holocaust. But I think last session there was Bill H310, which would essentially try to tighten up or prevent, I'm going to get the language wrong, but it would basically mandate the teaching of what anti-Semitism is in schools. Have you seen this bill, or have you
I remember hearing about the bill. I don't know who put it forward, but I do believe that we have an obligation to remember history, because history has a bad habit of repeating itself. I remember when I first saw Schindler's List, for example. I think it's a powerful, powerful movie. I think everyone should see that to remind us of what happened then, so it doesn't repeat itself. But there are other examples as well. I think just teaching history is important to kids, again, so it doesn't repeat itself.
You were at the menorah lighting, I believe, on Tuesday, yesterday.
Last night.
Last night. What did you hear from Jewish Vermonters over there, and others too?
You know, it's I've been to it numerous times over the years, and it's always very festive, always optimistic, and actually a lot of fun being there with them. And it was, you know, again, you hear a lot from them, but they appreciate when people show up and at least recognize their faith and stand with them. And that was, again, it was all optimism from my standpoint. And then I read a story to the kids. There was more kids there last night than I remember over the many years, the last decade. And I read them a Hanukkah story about Old Bear, and they were just very appreciative of that. So again, if you have an opportunity to go and celebrate with them, they would welcome your being there.
Governor, you read that post-World War II poll. I wanted to ask, because you read that, do you feel like you see some elements of history almost repeating nowadays?
Again, I don't think we should lose sight of what's happened in the past, because that's what happened then. And I just think we just need to keep reminding ourselves that evil still exists, and we have an obligation to turn that around by just being decent human beings and calling it out when we see it. So, yeah, I mean, I fear that we forget too soon.
Governor, I also wanted to ask about a piece of legislation regarding guns and bars. I wanted to ask for your thoughts on that. I spoke to the pro tem, says it's going to be in committee again. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts haven't changed on that bill. I don't think it's going to have much of an effect, a positive effect. I don't think what we've seen over the years is exactly a problem with guns and bars. It's the violence, and we need to do all we can to make sure that we're protecting our visitors and Vermonters, but I don't think guns and bars is going to fix that.
Can you talk about?
And I should say, to prevent guns and bars, we'll prevent that from happening.
Can you talk about your administration's decision to want to use one-time money in BAA to buy down property taxes?
Well, this is just step one. We were able to provide tax relief last year with one-time money, and with the thought that we need to move forward with education transformation in order to make that permanent. We need more tax relief. The system we have now, as I've said, and many of us have acknowledged at this point, we have a system that isn't efficient. It is using up more money that should be going to kids, but it's going up to the system that doesn't work as well as it once did. So it really is a stopgap measure. And when we saw the 12% possible increase on average, that accounts for about $200 million. The BAA is something of a true-up. It's presented every year, and historically it's been used just to fix the true problems, the unanticipated expenses that have happened during the year or at midpoint of the year, and we wanted to make sure that the legislature knew that we were taking just what we needed to do that true up, but there was money that was left that we wanted to make sure that we fenced off and protected, so they didn't spend it on something else, because we're going to need that, we believe, to buy down the tax rate and provide tax relief to Vermonters. Now, that's just phase one. This is just the BAA. We are still going to continue to look to find other opportunities to buy down that rate, but as well, we want to see what happens with the votes in terms of the voters in their ed bills and school legislation. So we all have an obligation to do our part here. The legislature could look at caps to prevent too much school spending. They could do that. The schools, the voters could determine that they're not going to allow for any excess spending and to really focus on that. And and we need to move forward with the education transformation for the long term. And if we don't do that, if we're unwilling to do that, then I'm not sure that we should focus on trying to buy down that rate, because if this is what the reality is, and there's no education transformation, that this is going to repeat itself year after year after year, and we're not going to be able to afford it, and we're not going to be able to utilize this money that we're looking for, because it has to come out of a different pocket. It's not as though it magically appears. It's not excess. It's money that we're going to have to take that would have gone for another initiative that will go to provide tax relief. So again, we'll see what the legislature thinks, where we go during the session. We'll be presenting our budget in mid-January, but it's going to be a tight year. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we provide that tax relief without raising taxes to do it, which would be counterintuitive.
You've said how you and the pro tem and the speaker, by and large, are on the same page of where the ball's heading on the court for education reform. But what are you doing to engage, or what is the speaker or the pro tem doing to engage with rank and file members? A lot of them, as you know, are getting kind of uneasy and hearing a lot from their communities about what education transformation means. I mean, when we have these new maps or whatever happens this session, do you think that you'll be able to count to 100, so to speak, in the House to pass a bill here?
Well, we certainly hope so. We did last session. There was enough votes to pass the measure there. So we hope that we can move forward with that, because it's really the only answer at this point. It's certainly the most immediate answer that I've seen for quite some time. We've advocated over the years, over the last 10 years, for many tax, I'd say savings for taxpayers that the legislature hasn't adopted. But it appears that everyone is most of us are on the same page that we need to do something.
Are you concerned that election year politics might get in the way, instead of working for broad education transformation for cost savings and improved outcomes for kids, that this might turn political? Well,
With 2-year increments, it's always going to be political. But I'd say in this case, the voters I think they spoke pretty loudly of the last election, that they want relief, that we need to do better. And so I'm hopeful that legislators heard that message and will react accordingly.
Governor, if the state does go in the direction of buying down property taxes, do you know what the new rate would potentially be if the state were to do that?
I do not. I mean, we want to, like I said, we're estimating there's going to be about a $200 million increase at this point. And we want to provide as much tax relief as possible. But it truly is an opportunity for all of us. We don't want school boards to just assume that the legislature and the executive branch are going to come together, the governor's going to come together and bail them out, so to speak. We want them to do their part, and they need to look at their budgets and provide, just as we did with the budget adjustment. It's a bare bones budget adjustment that we presented to the legislature. We want to fence off any excess money that was there to provide for tax relief. So we hope school boards will listen and look for savings, not in the traditional way, maybe not just in some of those programs and cutting sports and languages and so forth and AP courses, that they'll look for their structural issues that are costing money as well.
And Governor, on the redistricting topic,
school districts throughout the state have voiced that they're very much against this. Last week, the Burlington School District published an op-ed, and a quote from it says, this year with the December 1st letter and the administration's feedback on the letter, it seems designed to spread fear and create distrust in our education system. What do you think about this?
We're spending $2.5 billion to educate about 83,000 kids. And we're almost, if not the highest, one of the top 2 or 3 in the nation in spending. And we're not getting the results that we need. Now, Burlington may be an outlier. I mean, they're doing pretty good. They passed their bond. They're getting a new school. I think we provided $10 million towards that school. That it wasn't my idea, but legislature moved forward with that. We gave them, I think, $4 or $5 million to temporarily locate at in downtown Burlington. So we've helped them out over time. But my question would be, who's helping out the rural areas of the state? They're not doing as well as Burlington is. So I keep my eye and my ear open to what we can do for those areas of the state that have been left behind economically, and we want to help them too.
Well, and another thing I wanted to bring up
that even districts in rural areas have said is that they don't see the evidence for redistricting and how it would solve property taxes. What are the biggest pieces of evidence from your administration as to why this plan is so needed? What is that answer?
Well, when you have so many supervisory unions and districts in Vermont, nobody wants to cut themselves out of that, right? Hey, think about how many we actually have. 119 right now. As I've said before, Hawaii has one. Nobody wants to close their school. Nobody wants to. They don't want to do anything that would affect their own district. However, they might see that somebody else's district ought to do something because we all pay this together. It's all in one big pot. So, again, I would ask them what they think we should do. We have, again, it's not hard to see the inefficiencies in the system. It's not hard. It's math problems in some respects when you see the number of students that are being educated, the number of programs that aren't the same from district to district. Some are getting shortchanged. And we want to make sure that there is truly an equal education system that is the best in the nation at a price we can afford. And I think we can accomplish all of that if we put our heads together and do the tough work, because this won't be easy, but it's a necessity. If we want to continue to provide in other areas, I mean, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Paul's not being very efficient right now. So when you think about 2/3 of the total spending is raised through the property tax, there's a third of that we don't even see in some respects. I mean, the sales tax, 100% of the sales tax is about $600 million that goes there, and we don't see that bill in our hands, right? We don't get a bill for all the sales taxes we pay every single year, but we see our property taxes. But there's a third more that we don't see. So we have to look at the entire system, and we need to do better.
And one last thing on education.
2 school districts, including one in Montpelier, could vote to close some schools tonight. 2 elementary schools here in Montpelier's district and the high school in Danville School District. What do you think about these moves and how it relates to changing education? Is this evidence that redistricting is still the way to go?
I think it's a great example of what our challenge is when there's been a move to combine Doty and Rumney for years, decades probably. 2 schools within 5 miles of each other, both underperforming, both with low student numbers. So that's a great example. Or you can just look here at Montpelier High School, and 3-4 miles away is Union 32. Harwood's not that far. Northfield's not that far. Spalding's not that far. Williamstown's not that far. I mean, we have all of these separate schools. There's got to be a better way to do this, but nobody wants to close down their school, but are willing to consider consolidating as long as it doesn't affect them. And so that's why when you have smaller, a high number of districts, smaller number of districts that represent some of those schools, the less apt you are going to get change, because they don't have to. And the way the funding system works, it's just send the bill to Montpelier and they'll pay it. Then we raise property taxes in order to cover it.
All right, we'll switch over to the phones. Sean, VT Digger.
Thanks, Amanda. Governor, just on the property tax buy-down piece again, I'm just wondering if you could say anything more specifically about kind of like which specific proposals you're considering to maybe buy down property taxes more than just that $75 million in the BAA. Like, what specific levers are you maybe thinking about for the budget or for the session?
Yeah, again, we're actively looking through our own budget that we'll be presenting to the legislature in mid-January. So I'm not going to get out ahead of that, but suffice it to say, we're looking in every corner, every nook and alleyway to find more money. And again, it comes out of another pocket. So there's going to be some who will win, some who are going to lose. And in this case, it's going to have to come out of something else we do. It's unfortunate, but we're not going to raise taxes in order to cover it. I see our commissioner here. Would you like to weigh in, or?
I think that inevitably. Good afternoon. I think inevitably it's going to entail choices. We have a lot of priorities that we would like to be able to meet, and I'm sure others have other priorities. But at the end of the day, we have a property tax challenge, and we need to address it head on. So I think it's not very complicated in that regard. We have to make choices.
Thanks, Commissioner. One on a slightly different topic. Governor, I'm just wondering if you've been in touch at all with anyone from the federal government over the last week or so about the deployment of the Air National Guard, and just anything you can share about any communication there.
Yeah, we are staying in touch, obviously, with the National Guard here, the Vermont National Guard, General Knight, and that's about all we have. We are not conversing with the federal government on this. We're letting that conduit go through from the feds to the leadership at the Vermont National Guard, and then we're getting our information from them. But there's not much I can share at this point.
Yeah, okay. And then just lastly, more generally, I was just curious to hear your thoughts on this, military buildup in and around the Caribbean and Venezuela specifically, and what you think of kind of the trajectory that we've seen coming from the White House in terms of that buildup of military there.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know what we're doing. I haven't heard anything officially, but we're all seeing it and hearing it, and with different opinions. And the deployment is under Title X, so it's in a national interest of some sort. So we'll see whether it's just saber rattling, and I'm hopeful that we're not actually going to war with anyone. But if we are going to war, then that's something that the President should share with Congress.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Keith Whitcomb, Rutland Herald.
Hi, I've got 3 questions. One of them is kind of on topic. I thought I heard you mention, Mr. Governor, that you said something about 2-year election cycles, and that sort of being the reason that a lot of just about everything we talk about is colored by election politics. I was curious if you think having longer period between elections might help matters at all or change things.
Probably not on the local level. I think I've always thought that the governor should have a 4-year term. I still believe that, but maybe not now. But in the future, I think there should be a 4-year term for governor. But you know, it's just the normal cycle. My point was, it's always political. It's always someone worried about the next election, and that doesn't always get the best results. But sometimes that spurs some to action. So in this case, we're going to hope that legislators get the message that Vermonters have had enough, and they want tax relief, and property tax relief in particular.
Thank you. Second question. Jim Harrison, the House rep from Chittenden, Killington, Mendon area, says he is going to be resigning on January 6th or 7th, I believe. I was curious if you'd yet been given a list of potential replacements for him.
Not that
had happened. I don't remember. Right?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, Keith, but I know we'll be looking for that as soon as possible.
Okay. Last one. This is about the general assistance, the hotel program. My understanding is it's capped by law at 1,100 rooms statewide, but I am also hearing that from a physical capacity perspective, the number's actually quite lower. Does anyone know right now how many rooms are available, if they're full, if there's a waiting list, what the status of that all is?
Yeah, I'll try and answer part of that, and then I'll have somebody come up and fix all of what I say. The 1,100 cap is during the off-season, so to speak, not during the winter. So the cap is lifted at that point in time. And I believe it was running lower throughout the year, but I believe the last numbers I saw were that it's around that 1,100 number, maybe a little bit over at this point in time. So maybe Kristen could fill us in on the rest.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. Governor was right on that. So the number during the winter, the 1,100 cap is lifted. It's more closer to hotel capacity, which we're seeing run about 1,200, much like the governor had indicated.
Do we know if there's like a waiting list, or is it full, or is there anything like that? Or
Yeah.
There are some available rooms. This year we have designated family hotels to keep children and family safe, and there's some availability in the family hotels.
And we should also mention that we're shelter first state. So the first step is finding an emergency shelter, and then the GA program after that, or the hotel program after that.
thank you.
Tom Davis, Compass Vermont.
Thank you. No questions today. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom. Back to the room.
Governor, BAA also had some money, I think, for state police overtime, and I think the Chittenden Accountability Court. Can you just bring up to speed? It's been operating now for a while. Has it paid off? What do you think of it? Is it working through the backlog?
Yeah, I think it's working very well, but we'll prove that out over a little bit more time. Initially, we've reduced the backlog somewhat, brought the repeat offenders in, but we have more work to do. I think it's going to be a great lesson for us and the legislature. We'll be telling that story to the legislature, and hopefully be able to expand upon that in other regions of the state, because I think that there are other parts that could utilize and use an accountability court to fix some of the problems that we've seen in Burlington.
Governor, I had heard a rumor that some members potentially of the National Guard were deployed today. Have you heard anything about this?
I haven't heard anything officially, but that could be. I have not heard officially at this point.
And I wanted to ask
your feelings on this. The timing of this, it's right before a holiday. We don't have confirmation as to if and when they've left, but like right before the holiday, members will not be with their families potentially for the holiday. What do you think about this?
Yeah, our Guard members, both in the Air and Army, they're trained for this. They're prepared for this. And I think we have one of the best units in the country. Having said that, I know the timing isn't great. Right around the holidays, whatever the leave might be when they are deployed is unknown from my standpoint. But our obligation at this point is to take care of the families and make sure they have everything they need while their spouse, mom, dad are deployed. So we'll do that. But we'll anxiously await their return as well. But we'll take care of their families while they're away.
Governor, a group of 4 Republican Congress members just signed a petition to force a vote on the Affordable Care Act subsidies. So what do you make of that and just that ongoing battle in D.C. right now?
Yeah, I've said all along that when the closure happened of the government, this was all over the subsidies, and I thought it was unfortunate that the Republicans have had all this time, and I'm a Republican, but the Republicans have had the last year to put forward a health care bill that would replace the subsidies. They knew this was going to sunset. They didn't do so. Now, on the other side of the coin, I think some of the Democrats are asking for way too much, like they're digging in their heels to have a 3-year extension of these subsidies. I don't think that's conducive either. I think we should be coming up with a bill that works for everyone. So at this point, if the Republicans who have the House, the Senate, and the presidency can't come up with a plan that works for everyday Americans, that they should extend the subsidies until they do. So I applaud those members for, in 2 weeks' time, the subsidies will expire. And this will impact hundreds of thousands of Americans, tens of thousands of Vermonters. So I'm concerned, but I think they're doing the right thing. I think Rep. Mike Lawler from New York, I think he must be one of the ones. He's talked credibly about this. I think that he's got the right approach.
I just wanted to ask
again, just because the commissioner is here, do we know how much the property tax rate would decrease if the state does decide to buy down property taxes?
So we estimated that we had approximately a $200 million problem in the education fund. And at the close of the BAA, our proposal was to make a down payment on that of roughly $75 million. And why that? That's because that's what we had available. That was no magic number. It was simply what we had available after meeting our other obligations. So that ends up reducing by about 5% the amount that we need to close within the education fund. But I'd just like to be clear that this is one move. It's not the final move. This is what we have available, and in a budget adjustment, we typically don't put in policy. So this was what we had available, and we made it clear that we want to reserve this for education transformation. And that's maybe the other point I should make is, it's not all about money. It's also about transforming how we deliver education. And, the people listening in are well aware of the governor and his team, and our education secretary have had many things to say about that. So this is just one part of a comprehensive transformation, and it's just one, call it, payment towards it. There may be others, and there will certainly be a lot of dialogue on how we can cease this annual event of sending money to the education fund.
The last one for me, the Vermont Climate Council, I believe, earlier this week is advancing, or maybe next week, they're going to be advancing a new climate action plan. It's got sort of recommendations to adhere with the Global Warming Solutions Act, but unlike previous ones, this one doesn't have as many recommendations. Where do you see this train heading this session about GWSA, the lawsuits, all the like?
Secretary Moore, do you want to weigh in?
Sure, happy to, Governor. First, the Climate Action Plan was actually adopted by the Climate Council back in July. The councils met on Monday of this week and looked at a memo that was prepared by the Climate Action Office staff at ANR in response to a request that was included in that updated climate plan to look at a greenhouse gas reporting rule and offer a series of recommendations. And my expectation is the council will then send that memo forward to the legislature. Beyond that, I don't know of any plans for the coming session in the climate space. Imagine that question may be best put to the House Energy and Technology Committee, which seems to be leading on that. But certainly the concerns remain, and I think are accurately reflected in the Climate Action Plan about the costs associated with achieving some of the targets in the Global Warming Solutions Act and the challenges of doing the magnitude of work that would be required by 2030. We are in the process at ANR of running some analyses. All of the work directed by the council to date had focused on what it would take to meet those targets. And we're sort of turning those questions around to ask how much does it cost to achieve what result, and should have those analyses completed either this summer or this fall.
Governor, last year you had a proposal to repeal the private right of action in the Global Warming Solutions Act, also roll back the renewable energy standard. I mean, while you've been in the room with the pro tem and the speaker hashing out education, I mean, has this come up at all? Has there been any willingness, or have you been able to make that pitch, the cost pitch that you've been saying since 2020? Have you been able to have those conversations?
Yeah, we have not had any conversations with that particular issue. Our focus really has been about taxes and education transformation and housing. So that's where and public safety, of course. But we'll focus on those, but if they would like to engage on the others, we'll be happy to discuss them with them.
Governor, one last from me. I know that the Attorney General's office is filing a lawsuit related to electric vehicles and funds related to that. What do you think about this, and the withholding of funds for electric vehicles for Vermont?
Joe, do you want to begin?
Sure. Thank you, Governor. I read that article today, and my understanding is a conversation that I had with Attorney Rose from the Attorney General's office. And I believe that this has to do with the city of Burlington. There's a charging check billing infrastructure program that Congress had appropriated funds for, and apparently the city of Burlington had been awarded some money, but the money hadn't been sent to anybody. As a result of that award, AOT had gathered applicants for the NEVI program, the National Electric Vehicle Initiative Program, to look at awarding some funding. The agency chose not to award to Burlington because it was public knowledge that Burlington had been selected for some of the CFI money. I don't want to speak for the Attorney General's office, but in the conversation that it had with me, it appears as though the background is, Burlington didn't get the money because Congress hasn't been sent, and AOT overlooked Burlington because it thought it was getting this money, and they may be trying to make a case for there being some harm as a result of that. But again, I do not speak for the Attorney General's office. This was just the discussion, that occurred with me. The outreach was, do we think there's some there, if you will? And everything that I've stated are public facts. And so my comment was, this is different in my mind than the original issue that we had a few months back regarding the NEVI money, that everything that was stated was factual. And this, I think, is because that CFI funding has not been released.
All right, thank you all very much.